Hey guys, welcome back to Based MMA. In this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my main card predictions for UFC 323 Merab Dvalishvili versus Peter Yan 2. We're going to be breaking down these matchups, and when you look at this card, it's not like the most how do I say, like high profile matchups or like crazy matchups that we've been waiting for, but there's a lot of fun fights on this card. I feel like this is a very fun pay-per-view, and I feel like this card is a typical December card for the UFC. I mean, if you look at the one we got last year, I believe it was with Kaya Sakura. You know, it wasn't like the craziest card, but there was a lot of fun matchups for hardcore UFC fans. If you take a look, I mean, this was a very, very fun card for the end of the year. And I think before that, we had the Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington card, which is also like stacked. So I feel like this is a very fun card. Like I said, I mean, it's hard for me to be like that hyped about Peter Yan rematch against Merab after he got dominated in the first fight, which I'm gonna talk about when I talk about that fight. It's still a very fun card with a lot of solid matchups. So before I get started, please make sure to like and subscribe. And even if you don't like my videos, go comment down below how I'm trash. That really helps the algorithm. That really helps get traction on my videos. So let's get started with the first fight on the main card. So the first fight on the main card, we have Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. And I think this is a very interesting matchup because Jan Blachowicz, he's a fan favorite, man. I really love Jan, but I have to admit, you know, he hasn't looked that great. He's older. You know, I feel like the last time Jan really had like a good win in the UFC, excuse me, I'm gonna burp. It got stuck in there. Anyway, the last time Jan had a good win in the UFC was against Israel Adesanya, because look at his resume. I mean, I know he's lost and he's had a lot of close fights. He had a close fight against Carlos Ulberg, but it was mainly because of lack of output. It wasn't like Jan was like throwing crazy strikes and was really pressuring. This was a very lackluster fight. It was still a very close fight, but it wasn't anything to write home about. I wasn't like, oh man, Jan is really a top contender in the light heavyweight division, even though he lost that fight. Before that, he had a very close fight against Alex Pereira, where I actually thought he had won that fight. I thought it was very close. I thought he had won based on control time in that first round. I thought he landed the better strikes, but his body language wasn't great at the end of that third round, where he looked just super tired. So I understand why they gave the fight to Alex Pereira. Still a very good performance by Jan. Nothing to be embarrassed about. Now, the important thing to know is that in between these two fights here, Jan has had a couple of surgeries. Like, he had like a long layoff after the fight against Alex Pereira, and that definitely concerns me now that he's a little bit older in his career, that he's been in a lot of wars. You know, he's had a couple of surgeries now. I don't think he looked like the same guy against Carlos Ulberg. I thought it was a very kind of uninspired performance. You know, he had that draw against Magomed Ankalaev where he did very good in those first two rounds with the low kicks, with hurting Magomed Ankalaev on the feet. But then Magomed Ankalaev was able to take over in those later rounds, and in my opinion, you know, won that fight. You know, before that, he beat Alexander Rakic, but I don't really count it as a clean win because Rakic got hurt in that fight. I don't know if he blew out his knee or his ACL. I forgot what was the injury in that fight, but I don't count it as a really clean win. Before that, you know, he had a very uninspired performance against Glover Teixeira. So, I mean, it's hard, right? Because in one hand, it's like, okay, he's losing to all these guys. At the same time, look at who he's fighting. He's fighting Ulberg. He's fighting Pereira. He's fighting Ankalaev. He's fighting Rakic. He's fighting Glover Teixeira. Like, these are top contenders in the light heavyweight division. These are really good names. And when I look at Bogdan Guskov, yes, he's on a five-fight win streak, but look at the names he's fighting. Nikita Krylov, who had just gotten knocked out a couple months before against Dominic Reyes. Okay, so it's hard for me to really be that impressed by knocking out Nikita Krylov, who now we've learned has a granite chin. No, not a granite chin, a glass chin. And then before that, I remember watching this fight live because I went to LA to watch this pay-per-view in person, and I thought like it wasn't like the most impressive performance just because I believe this guy was stepping in on short notice. So I wasn't like that impressed with that performance. I think he got like a second or third round TKO if I'm not mistaken. Then he beat Ryan Spann, which, I mean, it's Ryan Spann. Like, I don't know how legitimate that win really is. And then Pogba, then he lost to Volkan Ozdemir early in his UFC career. So yeah, he's on a 5-fight win streak. He has really good striking. He has good power. He is explosive. Maybe he could knock out Jan at this point in his career, but Jan is still a very defensively sound fighter. He's still a very good striker. I think this is going to be a close fight here. I'm going to go with Jan to win this fight. Now, I feel like a dumbass saying that because Jan has lost like almost all of his last 5-6 fights. So I guess maybe you want to pick Bogdan Guskov, but I think that Bogdan Guskov is not at the level of an Alex Pereira, at least not yet, or of Magomed Ankalaev, or of Carlos Ulberg. I just haven't seen enough for me to be like, oh, Bogdan Guskov is the next big thing, when it's like, bro, you knocked out Nikita Krylov, who got slept by Dominic Reyes a couple months prior. Like, it's hard for me to be like that impressed. Like I said, Jan is a little bit older now. He's had a couple of surgeries. Maybe this is the performance where Jan really falls off. So, in my opinion, I would stay away from this fight. I still think Jan is going to win this fight, but I would stay away from this fight just from a betting perspective. Now, the next fight we have here is Henry Cejudo versus Payton Talbott. And I think this is a very fun matchup. This is definitely a very random fight just because Payton Talbott is not ranked in the UFC. And then Henry Cejudo is kind of a guy that's kind of on his way out. So I think none of us really expected this matchup. I think it's going to be a fun fight here. And Henry Cejudo's last fight. Now, I think Payton Talbott is going to win this fight. I think it's going to be a very close fight. The problem here for Henry Cejudo is that, one, he's very short. I feel like he's kind of an outdated bantamweight. He's a bantamweight from the old era of the UFC, and now we have guys like Payton Talbott who are super tall. We got guys like Sean O'Malley. We have guys who are very well-rounded, and I feel like Henry Cejudo was fighting at a time where guys weren't as well-rounded as they used to be, plus the fact that Henry Cejudo is a little bit older now. He's a little bit slower. He's had injuries. He's had surgeries. And even though Payton Talbott obviously hasn't fought the caliber of opponents that Henry Cejudo has fought, and I'm not even saying that Henry Cejudo has looked bad in his last couple of performances, I like the fact that Payton Talbott is taller, he's longer, he's more powerful. I think he's a better striker. Yeah, Henry Cejudo has really good dirty boxing, but his reach, man, I worry here about his reach. Payton Talbott throws really good knees. I think that maybe Henry Cejudo can win this fight, maybe with the takedowns, a couple of control time here and there. I don't see him holding Payton Talbott for that long, and I think Payton Talbott probably learned a lot from the Raoni Barcelos fight, as we saw in his fight against Felipe Lima. I just, as much as I want to pick Henry, because I feel like I always pick him. I always pick Triple C, Triple Can C. But I just can't pick him in this matchup, man. He's on his way out. Payton Talbott is a younger fighter. This is only a 3-round fight. Henry Cejudo doesn't have like crazy volume. He has T-Rex arms. Yes, he has dirty boxing, but he doesn't have, in my opinion, enough power to really hurt someone like Payton Talbott, even though he is fast on the feet. He is kind of explosive on the feet with the low kicks, with the combinations. I think Payton Talbott is going to be the more powerful, the more crisper shots, with straight shots, knees to the body, low kicks to those legs. And I think it's going to make Henry Cejudo kind of have to take a lot of risk to get those takedowns, to get those control time. And I could see Henry Cejudo getting finished in this fight. So I'm going to go with Payton Talbott to win. It would be cool to see Henry Cejudo win, but I feel like there's a reason why they're giving Payton Talbott this matchup, because I feel like they're going to use Henry Cejudo as a stepping stone for Payton Talbott to climb at the top of the bantamweight division and maybe have a new contender for, I don't know, Peter Yan or Umar Nurmagomedov or potentially Merab Dvalishvili. So I don't like this fight for Henry Cejudo, man. I think that if this fight was a couple years ago, maybe I would have picked him, but it's not even that he's looked bad, man, but it's like a guy like Song Yudong, who you guys are similar stature. I think Song Yudong is a little bit taller than Henry Cejudo, but they kind of have similar build. Now you're fighting someone like Payton Talbott, who's a lot more elusive, who's taller, who's longer, who's more powerful, who's fresh, who has been more active, who hasn't had the injuries that you have, who isn't on his way out. I just have to go with Payton Talbott, man. I think he's going to make a lot of improvements when it comes to the grappling. And like, think about Henry Cejudo's last couple of fights. Like, when has he had a heavy grappling approach? I mean, I know he's fought guys like Merab and Aljamain Sterling who rely a lot on their grappling, and maybe he kind of wanted to test his striking against those type of guys. But the problem with Henry Cejudo as well is that he doesn't have crazy volume, and neither does Payton Talbott, if I'm being honest. But I think Payton Talbott at least will land the more cleaner shots on the feet, and I think he'll either win by a TKO or by a decision. Now moving on, we have Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. A very interesting matchup as well. I feel like this is the card of the Unks versus the young fighter here, because Brandon Moreno, obviously he's been in a lot of wars. He's fought for the title multiple times. He's become champion. He's lost the title. He's fought the best of the best in the flyweight division. And now he's fighting a Taira, who's only really lost to Brandon Royval, and I think he's learned a lot from that fight. Very good guy, not very good guy, very good wrestler, very good grappler, very good on the ground, good jiu-jitsu, good striking, good powerful, explosive. But I think Brandon Moreno is going to win this fight, man. I really like how Brandon Moreno looked in his fight against Steve Ercik. He's still crafty. He has really good boxing. I like his composure. When Brandon Moreno is on, he's on, man. I know that he lost to Brandon Royval just a couple fights ago, but in my opinion, that was not the Brandon Moreno I know. That was a very uninspired performance. I don't know if it had to do with the elevation in Mexico. I don't know what happened in that fight, but I'm not going to judge him too harshly for that fight. But when you look at Brandon Moreno's career, dude, the guy has fought everybody and he's had close fights. I mean, if you think about it, Brandon Moreno has had the closest fight against Alexander Pantoja in recent memory. Like, who has given Pantoja the type of fight? I mean, I know Steve Ercik also kind of had a close fight with Alexander Pantoja, but Brandon Moreno really made Pantoja fight for that title. And I feel like he's the only guy that has really been able to do that. And like I said, I really like his experience. I like his composure. I like the way he looked against Steve Ercik. If Brandon Moreno was coming off that win or that loss, in my opinion, against Brandon Royval, then maybe I would be picking Taira. But I just think he's the better striker, man. I think he's the better striker. I think he throws better combinations. I do worry a little bit because this is a 3-round fight and Brandon Moreno hasn't been in a 3-round fight in quite a while. So maybe that kind of throws away a little bit of his rhythm. But I think he's experienced enough to win this fight. I know that even though he's a very young guy, he has been in a lot of fights, and Taira is definitely the fresher fighter. But I like Brandon Moreno, man. I think he's experienced. I don't think Taira is going to be able to take him to the ground and control him for long periods of time. I think Brandon Moreno is the better striker. I think he throws better combinations. He's an underdog. I'm going to take those odds, and I'm going to go with Brandon Moreno to win this fight. Now for the co-main event, we have Alexander Pantoja defending his title against Joshua Van for the co-main event of UFC 323. And this is going to be a very fun fight, man, because Joshua Van has some of the best striking in the flyweight division. He has really good boxing, really good power, really good combinations, really good fight IQ. But Alexander Pantoja has looked incredibly dominant, man. He looks so dominant against Kai Kara-France, was able to do everything and anything he wanted to Kai Kara-France on the ground and on the feet. Kai Kara-France just wasn't able to do anything, man, because what's really special, in my opinion, about Alexander Pantoja is his relentless pressure, man. He has relentless pressure, and then he has a granite chin, and then he also has power. Yeah, he's not a very technical striker. He doesn't have a jab or a right. He just throws right overhands and left hooks, and yeah, he's very explosive, but the guy hits very hard, so he immediately earns the respect of his opponents. And I think Joshua Van is obviously the better striker. I think that if they're boxing, I think Joshua Van is going to win most of those exchanges. But if you've seen any Alexander Pantoja fight, you know that at some point this fight is going to hit the ground, and I just don't trust Joshua Van on the ground. I feel like we really haven't seen it. I know that one of his earlier losses in his career was by submission loss. And I just think that this is a big step up, man. I think this is a big step up. I just think Pantoja is a little bit too dominant when it comes to his grappling, when it comes to his jiu-jitsu, that even though maybe Joshua Van is able to defend a couple of those takedowns, Pantoja is going to be in his face, landing big shots, and I just don't know if he's going to give the opportunity for Joshua Van to really get his rhythm on the feet, to really be able to win this fight with the boxing. I just don't see it. I think Pantoja still shows that he has a granite chin. He has an amazing chin. He has power on the feet. He could hurt Joshua Van on the feet. I just think Pantoja has so many ways to win this fight, and that's not to say that Joshua Van isn't capable of winning this fight or isn't capable of becoming a champion, but I just haven't seen enough on the ground for me to be like, okay, Joshua Van is going to defend the takedowns and then be able to, hurt him on the feet and win up by decision, by TKO. I just haven't seen enough here. And yeah, Brandon Royval, it's a good win, but I mean, Brandon Royval really didn't try to take him to the ground. It was mainly a striking battle. And obviously Joshua Van has just crispier striking than someone like Brandon Royval, who kind of relies a lot on his volume, who doesn't have a lot of power. So I just think Pantoja is just too much, man. I just think it's a bit too much. I know that sometimes we get excited. We want to pick the underdog, and maybe Joshua Van is able to win. Maybe, this is a fight where Pantoja finally shows, you know, maybe wrinkles, or the fact that he's getting older, or maybe the fact that he's going to start to decline. Who knows? Who knows, right? You never really know in this game. You know, one fight, the fighter looks amazing. The next fight, you know, you start to see them, you know, decline and stuff like that. Maybe this is the fight, but I just don't see it, man. I just think Pantoja is a little bit too dominant when it comes to his grappling, when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. I was very impressed by the fact that he gave Karkarov Franz no opportunities on the feet, and he's a guy that's not afraid to stink up a fight. Like, Pantoja's not the type of fighter who's going to be like, oh, fans want me to strike, so I'm going to strike. No, Pantoja doesn't give a fuck. He only cares about winning, and I respect that. I think his grappling is high level. I just think it's levels above Joshua Van. And yes, Joshua Van is a very good striker, but I think Pantoja is still dangerous enough, is still explosive enough on the feet to at least make Joshua Van a more reactionary fighter, or react more than actually strike. And I think that's going to give opportunities for Pantoja to take him down, be able to find a submission, or if he's not able to find the submission, at least win a 5-round fight here. So I hope it's a fun fight. I hope Joshua Van gets it done, but I just have to be honest, man. Pantoja has just looked incredibly dominant, and I'm not going to pick against any of these fighters until I really see signs of them declining. And like I said, Joshua Van, we've seen him get knocked out by Charles Johnson. We've seen him lose a couple of his fights. So it's not like this guy's undefeated. Like I said, I think Pantoja hits very hard. And if Pantoja had like a glass chin, then I'd be like, okay, maybe Van has a really good chance of winning this fight. Who knows? But I just don't see it, man. So I'm going to go with Pantoja to win this fight by a submission. I think he'll do it in the 3rd or 4th round, maybe even by decision, but maybe even by TKO. I could see really Pantoja winning by a lot. Like, he win by decision, by KO, or by submission. While Joshua Van, in my opinion, the only way I could see Joshua Van really winning this fight is by decision. That's the only way I really see it. I know he looked really good against Bruno Silva and Brandon Royval, and he's looked great. I mean, he's a really good boxer, really good striker, really good fight IQ, really good eyesight. You know, but he kind of fights with a rhythm, and I think Pantoja is not going to give him the opportunity to find his rhythm in this fight. So I just have to go with Pantoja to win this matchup. Now, moving on, we have the main event of the evening. We have Merab Dvalishvili facing off Peter Yan in the rematch. And this fight here, it's definitely an interesting one to talk about, because obviously we know that Merab Dvalishvili had a dominant performance over Peter Yan in that first fight. I've gone back and rewatched that fight, and you can definitely tell that Peter Yan was injured. He didn't really throw his right hand. Yes, he was able to defend a lot of takedowns, but here's a problem, man. Here's a problem. Here's the truth. Merab is just a nightmare of a style for Peter Yan. It just is. And as much as I want to find ways and little ways that maybe Peter Yan can win this fight because he is the better striker, I just can't, man. I just think Merab has improved more since that first fight. We all knew that Peter Yan is a good striker. We all knew that he's a really good fighter, really good mixed martial artist. But when I look at his last couple of fights, yes, they're good wins. But in my opinion, I haven't seen enough in Peter Yan's game to really be confident that he's improved to beat someone like Merab. Yes, he's beat guys like Marcus McGee in his last fight, which he looked very good. Before that, he had that fight against Davidson Figueiredo where he won as well. I think before that, he fought Song Yudong. So he has a lot of good wins on his resume, but I just haven't seen like improvements in his style to really match up well against Merab Dvalishvili. Now, there's something about this fight that scares me just a little bit, and I mentioned it when this fight got announced. I do worry about the fact that Merab Dvalishvili is about to fight for the 4th time this year. That concerns me. That truly concerns me, and that concerns me because that's a lot of activity. That's a lot of training camps. He just had a 5-round fight against Corey Sandhagen where I know that for the most part, Merab was in control of that fight, but Corey in moments did put up a good fight. And then before that, he fought O'Malley, and then he had that 5-round with Umar. And I do worry about the fact that he might look flat against Peter Yan, and then that maybe gives opportunities for Peter Yan, if he comes into this fight healthy with a better game plan, to make this fight a lot closer, for Peter Yan to land better combinations on the feet. Now the problem here, I'm not going to pick Peter Yan as much as I want to. I'm going to pick with Merab because he's looked so dominant. The guy's hungry. The guy's motivated. I love, you know what? I don't love Merab's style. I'm never going to pretend like I love the type of mixed martial arts style where you're just controlling somebody or taking them down and not really doing much or really not fighting submissions. But what I do respect about Merab Dvalishvili as a fighter is that this guy, he fights all the freaking time, and I respect that because we got guys like Hamza Chimaev who fight every 10 months. And then you have a performance against Dricus du Plessis like that where you just lay and pray for 25 minutes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about that because that's part of mixed martial arts. That's part of the game. But at the same time, if you're laying and praying for 25 minutes, I expect a quick turnaround. I wish that more champions were like Merab Dvalishvili, where they were fighting every 3 to 4 months, especially if they're not taking a lot of damage, especially if they have a heavy grappling style where you're not really in a war. Like if these guys were in a 5-round striking battles and wars, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, you can't turn around that quickly, man. You took a lot of damage. But we got guys like Chimaev. We got guys like Islam Makhachev who fight every 10 months where they don't really take that much damage in their fights and you barely see them. So I really respect that about Merab. But I could definitely see that aspect biting him in the ass in this matchup. Now, the good thing about this fight for Merab is that I feel like Merab's team definitely knows Peter Yan really well. They game plan for Aljamain Sterling when Aljamain Sterling was a champion. I think Aljamain Sterling fought very well the second time against Peter Yan. And the problem with Peter Yan is that even though he has really good boxing, really good Muay Thai, really good body kicks, he is very flat-footed. He's not very elusive on the feet. And what does Peter Yan do when somebody's striking or somebody's throwing punches or kicks at him? He has a very high guard. So the high guard leaves a lot of opportunities for his opponents to be able to take him down. And if they're not able to take him down, I mean, they're able to take him down, but they're not able to control him. At least that gives his opponents more opportunities to land on the feet. And that's the problem with Peter Yan, is that yes, he's a very good striker, but I think that for him to win this fight, he's gonna have to be the one on the front foot. He's gonna be the one that has to take risks. He's gonna have to be aggressive, and I just haven't seen that aggressive, dangerous Peter Yan in this matchup for me to be like, okay, he's gonna beat Merab. I feel like whoever beats Merab is gonna have power, is gonna not like. I just think Peter Yan is too reactionary, man. I feel like he's too reactionary, and you cannot have that style against Merab. I mean, we just saw what Merab was able to do. Corey, yeah, Corey is a better striker, but there was moments in that fight where Corey was just kind of frozen, and that's what Merab does to a lot of his opponents. He did that against Sean O'Malley, where Sean O'Malley just kind of becomes reactionary, kind of wait and see what Merab does, and by the time you try to like land a counter, Merab's already on your hips and taking you down. That's the problem here, and I just don't see how Peter Yan is going to be able to overcome that in this fight. I just don't see it. Yes, maybe the fight's a little bit close, especially if Merab has an off night where he looks a little bit flat at back-to-back training camps. I do worry about the fact that he's been very active. I have a bad feeling about that. I don't know why, but I also just can't pick against him because he's looked so dominant. He's a good fighter. Merab's striking is underrated, man. Merab has good power on the feet. I think he has good combinations. I wouldn't even be surprised if he hurts Peter Yan on the feet. At some point he's gonna take him down, and I just don't see how Peter Yan overcomes that if he's not aggressive, if he doesn't push forward, if he doesn't throw big shots. And Merab has a really good chin, man. I mean, he took some good shots from Umar Nurmagomedov. He's taking some big shots from Sean O'Malley. So Merab has truly shown a great chin here. So Peter Yan, when was the last time that Peter Yan knocked somebody out? It must have been like a long time ago. So yes, Peter Yan is powerful, he is crisp, but I just don't see him having the style to beat somebody like Merab. I just don't see it. The only way I see Merab losing is if he has an off night and he maybe just entertains the striking just to put on a show for the fans. And if you start to do that, then yeah, obviously Peter Yan, I think, is the better striker. He's going to throw the better combinations and maybe he's able to win a decision there. But I just don't see it, man. I just think Peter Yan, he reacts too much. He doesn't pressure forward. He doesn't have like crazy volume. And Merab, yeah, he's not necessarily like throwing the most technical combinations at you, but because he's in your face, because you're worried about getting taken down, because he's so strong, you just react. You're just reacting. And that's the thing that Merab does to a lot of his opponents. He makes them just react. And if you're reacting, then you're not following your game plan. You're not striking, and therefore you're losing the rounds. And that's how Merab just systematically beats his opponents, and I just don't see it here. I just don't see it. As much as I want to pick Peter Yan, I don't know. I just don't see how you beat Merab Dvalishvili at this point. He just looks incredibly dominant, very durable. He's improving with his striking. He's improving with his finishing ability. And I just think Merab can win by submission. I think he could win by decision. And I'm going to go with Merab to win this fight. I do think this fight could become interesting maybe in the later rounds, especially if they start to just strike on the feet. But I just think that Peter Yan would have to show crazy improvements when it comes to his style and just have a really good night to beat someone like Merab Dvalishvili.